My name is Rosanna, and I just turned 21 last month. I'm a computer science senior with a perfect GPA that nobody in my family knows about. They've always been too busy celebrating my sister Amanda's every achievement to notice mine. That's why it stung so much when my dad called yesterday demanding I attend her lavish wedding. When I hesitated, he immediately threatened to cut my tuition. If only he knew I'd secretly graduated top of my class already through an accelerated program. Before I tell you how I handled my family's ultimatum, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to deal with family drama. Trust me, what happened at that wedding changed everything. I grew up in a spacious colonial house in suburban Chicago with my parents Thomas and Elizabeth Henderson and my sister Amanda, who is 3 years older than me. From the earliest days, I can remember our family had a clear hierarchy, with Amanda firmly established as the golden child, while I existed in her shadow. My father built his fortune in commercial real estate development. He worked long hours when we were young, but always made time for Amanda's dance recitals and social events. My mother was a former Miss Illinois finalist who never quite got over losing her shot at Miss America. She channeled all those pageant dreams into Amanda, who inherited her blonde hair, blue eyes, and natural grace. I took after my father's side of the family with dark hair and a more athletic build. While Amanda twirled in tutus, I was the kid taking apart computers and rebuilding them. The difference in how our interests were treated became apparent early on. When I was 8, I won first place in a regional math competition. It fell on the same day as Amanda's minor role in a community theater production. My parents didn't even consider attending my event. They sent our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to take me instead. When I came home clutching my blue ribbon, my mother glanced at it and said, "That's nice, honey." But you should have seen Amanda on stage. She was radiant. Birthday celebrations showed the disparity too. Amanda's birthdays were elaborate affairs with professionally decorated cakes and dozens of guests. For my 13th birthday, my parents forgot entirely because it coincided with Amanda's college campus visit weekend. They brought me back a university pennant as an afterthought. Every family gathering became a showcase for Amanda's achievements. When relatives visited, conversations centered around her latest accomplishment. Amanda made cheerleading captain. Amanda got asked to prom by the quarterback. Meanwhile, my straight A's and computer science projects were treated as quirky footnotes if mentioned at all. My father dismissed my interest in technology as just a phase. When I showed him a simple program I'd written at 12, he patted my head and said, "That's cute, but you shouldn't spend so much time indoors. Why not try out for something social like your sister?" By high school, I had fully retreated into academics and computers. They became my sanctuary where I could excel on my own terms. I joined the robotics team and coding club, making friends who valued me for my skills rather than comparing me to a perfect older sister. The college decision process revealed just how conditional my parents' support was. Despite being accepted to MIT and Stanford with partial scholarships, my parents pushed me to attend Amanda's alma mater, Northwestern. "Why would you want to go somewhere else when your sister had such a wonderful experience here?" my mother asked, genuinely confused. My father was more direct. "We'll cover full tuition and expenses if you attend Northwestern like your sister. Otherwise, you'll need to figure out how to pay the difference." Unable to afford the out-of-state tuition at my dream schools without taking on massive debt, I compromised and chose the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. It wasn't MIT, but it had an excellent computer science program, was close enough to visit home occasionally, and far enough to build my own life. My parents seemed almost relieved that I wasn't going to a more prestigious tech school than Amanda's Northwestern. The night before leaving for college, I overheard my mother talking to Amanda on the phone. "I'm worried about Rosanna," she said. "She's always been so focused on these computer things. I wish she'd find a nice sorority like you did and meet some suitable boys. 4 years goes by so quickly, and she needs to think about her future." And little did they know I was thinking about my future more strategically than they could imagine. While they saw college as my path to finding a husband like Amanda, I saw it as my escape route from their suffocating expectations. The moment I set foot on campus at UIUC, I felt like I could breathe freely for the first time. My dorm room was small and I shared it with a stranger, but it was mine. No comparisons to Amanda, no disapproving glances when I stayed up late coding, no backhanded compliments about how I could be pretty too if I just tried. During freshman orientation, I met my roommate Zoe Garcia, a vibrant art major with purple hair and more confidence than I'd ever seen in someone our age. Unlike the careful social calculations I'd grown up with, Zoe was authentically herself. When I timidly unpacked my laptop and 3 external monitors, she didn't laugh or question it. Instead, she said, "That setup is seriously impressive. You must really know your stuff." That simple acknowledgement of my passion without judgment felt revolutionary. I threw myself into my computer science coursework with an intensity that surprised even me. Free from the constant comparisons to Amanda, my natural abilities flourished. I completed assignments in half the time of my classmates and often helped the teaching assistants find more elegant solutions to complex problems. By the end of my first semester, I had the highest grades in all my classes. Professor Janet Williams, who taught my advanced algorithms course, called me to her office after finals. "Rosanna, I've been teaching computer science for 20 years," she said, looking at me over her glasses. "I've had talented students before, but your aptitude is exceptional. Have you considered applying for our accelerated program?" I hadn't even known such a program existed. Professor Williams explained that exceptional students could complete their bachelor's and master's degrees in a compressed time frame through additional coursework and summer studies. It would be challenging, but she believed I could handle it. "The best part," she added, "is that if you maintain your GPA, you'll qualify for departmental scholarships that could cover much of your tuition." This was my chance. If I could secure scholarships, I could free myself from my parents' financial control. But I made a strategic decision not to tell them about this opportunity. Every time I shared an achievement, it somehow became twisted into a comparison with Amanda or was dismissed as unimportant. This would be my secret path to independence. I accepted Professor Williams' recommendation and began the accelerated track. It meant taking extra credits each semester and giving up summers, but I was motivated by the promise of freedom at the finish line. I secured a part-time job at the university's IT department to cover personal expenses, wanting to ask my parents for as little as possible. Balancing work, accelerated studies, and maintaining a perfect GPA was exhausting. There were nights I fell asleep at my desk, waking up with keyboard imprints on my cheek. But each time I considered slowing down, I remembered my father's dismissive tone when discussing my computer hobby and pushed harder. My friendship with Zoe became my lifeline. Though we studied completely different subjects, she understood ambition and the need to prove oneself. On nights when I was coding until dawn, she'd silently place coffee beside my keyboard. When I aced a particularly difficult project, she'd insist we celebrate, even if just for an hour. "You need to acknowledge your wins, Rosanna," she'd say. "No one else will do it for you." Meanwhile, my parents remained oblivious to my accelerated path. During holiday visits home, they'd ask perfunctory questions about school before shifting the conversation to Amanda's latest accomplishments. She'd graduated from Northwestern and was now working at a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago, dating a series of eligible bachelors from good families. By junior year, my reputation in the computer science department had grown. When a major tech company came to campus recruiting for summer internships, Professor Williams recommended me personally. I beat out seniors and graduate students for the position, which came with a generous stipend. When I called home to share the news, my mother's response was predictable. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Amanda just got promoted? Her boss says she's the youngest account manager they've ever had." That summer, while interning in Seattle, I received life-changing news. Based on my exceptional performance both academically and during the internship, I'd been awarded a prestigious full scholarship for my final year of studies. Between this scholarship and the credits I'd accumulated through the accelerated program, I discovered I could actually complete both my bachelor's and master's degrees by the end of the academic year, a full year ahead of schedule. I made the decision then to keep this milestone a secret from my family. Let them think I still had another year of school. Let them believe I was still dependent on their tuition payments. For once, I wanted to control my own narrative. By the time senior year officially began, I was already working on my master's thesis and had job offers from 3 leading tech companies waiting for my final decision. I graduated at the top of my class in December, though I wouldn't walk in the official ceremony until May. I had done it. I had secretly built a future for myself that no one in my family had thought possible, and I had done it largely without their emotional or practical support. What I didn't know was that my carefully constructed independence was about to collide head-on with family expectations in a way I never anticipated. The call from my father came on a Tuesday afternoon in April, just as I was preparing for a final round interview with my dream company. His name flashing on my phone screen was unusual enough to make me answer immediately. Dad rarely called me directly, typically leaving communication to my mother. "Rosanna," he said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he used for business calls. "Your sister is getting married in 3 weeks. You need to come home this weekend to get fitted for your bridesmaid dress." No greeting, no question about my availability, not even a proper invitation. Just a directive, as though my attendance was a foregone conclusion. "Wait, what, Amanda's engaged?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Last I'd heard, she had been dating someone new, a wealthy real estate investor named James, but that had only been for a few months. James proposed last month with a 4-carat diamond. They're having a spring wedding at the Grand Lakeview Resort. It's where they met at a charity gala, my father explained, impatience edging his voice. "Your mother has been trying to reach you about it." I checked my phone history. There was 1 missed call from Mom 2 weeks ago, but no voicemail, no text follow-up. Apparently my attendance was so assumed that they hadn't bothered to properly invite me. "Dad, I have final exams coming up," I said, which wasn't exactly a lie since I was still officially enrolled, despite having completed my requirements. "And I have an important job interview scheduled. I don't know if I can just drop everything for a wedding that's been planned without even consulting me." And there was a pause on the line, the kind that had always preceded my father's displeasure during childhood. "This is your sister's wedding, Rosanna," he said, his voice hardening. "Family comes first. I'm sure whatever tests you have can be rescheduled." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same sensation I'd experienced countless times growing up whenever my priorities were dismissed as insignificant compared to Amanda's needs. "It's not that simple," I tried to explain. "This interview is really important for my career, and I've been preparing for months." "Let me make this very clear," my father interrupted, his voice dropping to that quiet, dangerous tone I remembered from childhood scoldings. "Your sister's wedding is not optional. It's a significant family event, and your absence would be both noticed and commented upon by everyone in our social circle." Of course, the real concern was appearances, not my actual presence. "Furthermore," he continued when I didn't immediately respond, "if you choose not to participate in this family milestone, I'll be forced to reconsider our financial arrangement regarding your tuition for next semester." The threat landed exactly as he'd intended, sending a cold wave through me. Except he didn't know that his leverage no longer existed. Still, the sheer transactional nature of his ultimatum hurt more than I wanted to admit. "Are you seriously threatening to cut off my tuition because I might miss a wedding I wasn't properly invited to?" I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "I'm simply pointing out that family obligations work both ways, Rosanna. We support you, and we expect support in return. Your sister wants you there." That last part rang particularly hollow. If Amanda had wanted me there, she would have called me herself. We hadn't spoken in months, and she certainly hadn't asked me to be a bridesmaid personally. Before I could form a response, my phone beeped with another incoming call. My mother. Dad, Mom's calling me now. I need to go. Think about what I said, he replied. Your mother will handle the details. I switched calls emotionally, bracing myself. Rosanna, darling. My mother's voice was high-pitched, with forced cheer. Did your father tell you the wonderful news about Amanda and James? We're in such a flurry of excitement here. The conversation with my mother proved even more manipulative than the one with my father. While he had been direct with his threat, she employed emotional warfare. Amanda would be absolutely heartbroken if you weren't there standing beside her. She insisted, though Amanda and I had barely spoken 10 words to each other during my last visit home. She specifically requested you as a bridesmaid, Mom continued, though this was the first I was hearing about it. When exactly did she ask me to be a bridesmaid? I questioned. A brief pause. Well, with all the wedding chaos, she asked me to coordinate with the bridesmaids. You know how busy brides are. Translation. Amanda hadn't asked for me at all. This was my mother's doing. The conversation continued with details about the lavish destination wedding at an exclusive resort on Lake Michigan, the same place where Amanda had met James at a charity event. The costs involved were staggering, with guests expected to stay a minimum of 3 nights at the resort's premium rates. After ending the call with vague assurances that I would figure something out, I immediately searched social media for information about this supposedly important family event. There it was on Amanda's Instagram, multiple posts about her engagement and upcoming wedding, including several featuring her bride tribe at various pre-wedding events I'd never been invited to. In the comments of one photo, a family friend had asked, "Will your sister be joining the bridal party?" Amanda's response made my stomach clench. Rosanna's still finishing school. She's struggling with some difficult classes, so we're not sure if she can make it. Struggling. I had a perfect 4.0 GPA and job offers that would make most graduates envious. But of course, that didn't fit the narrative my family had constructed about me. I called Zoe, who had since graduated but stayed in town for her art studio job. They're unbelievable, she said after I recounted both conversations. But you know what? Go to the wedding. What? Why would I subject myself to that? Because, she said with the mischievous tone that usually preceded her best ideas, you have something they don't know about. You've already graduated. You have job offers. You don't need their money anymore. Go to this wedding, but go on your terms. It's time they saw the real Rosanna. As her words sank in, I realized she was right. For years, I'd avoided confrontation by flying under the radar. Maybe it was time to stop hiding my light. Will you come with me? I asked, as my +1. To witness you finally stepping out of the shadows, wouldn't miss it for the world. The Grand Lakeview Resort was every bit as ostentatious as its name suggested. Situated on a prime stretch of Lake Michigan shoreline, its manicured grounds and white columns screamed old money and exclusivity. As Zoe and I pulled up in our modest rental car amid a sea of luxury vehicles, I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach, the same one I'd experienced before every family gathering. Remember the plan, Zoe said, squeezing my hand. You're not that invisible girl anymore. After checking into our room, I began implementing the strategy I'd carefully crafted in the weeks leading up to the wedding. First, I had politely but firmly declined to participate in the last-minute bridesmaid activities, citing my late inclusion in the wedding party. Instead, I'd agreed to wear the designated dress, but would handle my own alterations locally. Next, I had arranged for my graduation honors and job offers to be updated on my LinkedIn profile and personal website precisely one day before the wedding. I'd also scheduled several congratulatory emails from professors and colleagues to arrive during the wedding weekend, ensuring my phone would be buzzing with professional acknowledgments throughout the event. Most importantly, I'd packed my outfit for the rehearsal dinner with particular care, selecting a sophisticated midnight blue tailored suit that projected confidence and success, a stark contrast to the frilly pink bridesmaid dress I'd be forced to wear for the actual ceremony. The first confrontation came within minutes of arriving at the resort. My mother spotted us in the lobby and made a beeline toward me, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. Rosanna finally... We were beginning to worry, she said, air kissing near my cheek before holding me at arm's length to inspect my appearance. Her smile faltered slightly. You look severe. Couldn't you have done something with your hair for your sister's special weekend? My hair was pulled back in a sleek, professional style that I'd worn for recent job interviews. It suited me perfectly. I like my hair this way, Mom, I replied calmly. This is Zoe Garcia, my +1. My mother's gaze flicked to Zoe, taking in her artistic appearance with poorly disguised disapproval. I don't recall the invitation including a +1 for you, dear. Dad said family comes first, I replied evenly. Zoe is family to me. Before my mother could respond, Amanda appeared surrounded by a cluster of identically dressed women who I assumed were the other bridesmaids. My sister looked flawless in a white designer sundress, her engagement ring catching the light with every practiced gesture. You made it, Amanda exclaimed with theatrical surprise, as though my attendance had been genuinely uncertain. She gave me a quick hug that felt more like a social obligation than sisterly affection. I wasn't sure if you could get away from your studies. I wouldn't miss it, I replied, noticing how she didn't introduce me to her friends or ask anything about my actual studies. Throughout the afternoon, I observed Amanda introducing me to wedding guests with subtle but unmistakable diminishment. This is my little sister, Rosanna. She's still in school studying computers, right? Each time I politely corrected her. Computer science, yes, at the University of Illinois. By the time we gathered for the wedding rehearsal, I had cataloged at least a dozen instances where Amanda had positioned me as somehow less accomplished, less established, less significant than everyone else in attendance. The rehearsal itself reinforced this narrative, with me positioned at the furthest edge of the bridal party, barely visible in the wedding formation. During a break in the rehearsal, I overheard Amanda speaking with our mother near the venue's bar. I just wish she had made more of an effort, Amanda was saying, not bothering to lower her voice. Everyone else looks so polished, and she shows up looking like she's going to a job interview instead of my wedding. I know, sweetheart, my mother soothed. But you know Rosanna, she's always been different. At least she's here. Your father made sure of that. The rehearsal dinner that evening was held in the resort's glass-enclosed terrace overlooking the lake. I wore my planned outfit, the tailored blue suit that made me feel armored against their judgment. As we took our seats at assigned tables, I noticed I'd been placed with distant relatives and my parents' older business acquaintances, far from the central table where Amanda James and their closest friends were seated. Midway through the dinner, one of my table companions, an older gentleman, turned to me with genuine interest. So you're studying computer science? My company's always looking for good tech people. What area are you focusing on? Before I could answer, a voice interrupted. Walter, I didn't realize you were seated all the way over here. My father appeared, clapping the man on the shoulder. I see you've met my younger daughter. Yes, we were just discussing her studies in computer science. Fascinating field. A flicker of surprise crossed my father's face before he smoothly responded. Rosanna's always had unique interests. But tonight is all about celebrating Amanda and James, isn't it? The conversation was deftly redirected, but not before Walter handed me his business card under the table with a conspiratorial wink. The evening culminated with a series of toasts. Amanda's maid of honor gave a gushing speech about their sorority friendship. James's best man recounted their business collaborations. My father spoke emotionally about welcoming James into the family, And through it all, I remained silent and invisible, exactly as I had been throughout my childhood, watching the spotlight focus exclusively on Amanda. But as I observed the practiced smiles and rehearsed emotions, I realized something important. This carefully curated perfection wasn't real. And for the first time, I didn't envy my sister's place in the spotlight. I was building something authentic, something earned through my own merit rather than family expectations. When Amanda closed the evening with her own speech, thanking everyone who had supported her journey to this perfect moment with her perfect fiancé, she listed friends, extended family, even her wedding planner. She did not mention me once. Zoe squeezed my hand under the table. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "tomorrow they'll see the real you." The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned sunny and mild, perfect weather that my mother would undoubtedly take credit for somehow arranging. I reported dutifully to the bridal suite at the appointed time, the pink bridesmaid dress I'd been assigned hanging in a garment bag over my arm. The suite was chaos when I arrived. Multiple bridesmaids were getting their hair and makeup done simultaneously, while others were helping themselves to mimosas from a lavish breakfast spread. Amanda sat in a central position before a lighted mirror, a makeup artist working intently on her face. "You're late," she said when she spotted me in the reflection, though I had arrived exactly at the time specified in the group text. "The text said 9:30, I replied calmly. "Everyone else knew to come early." She sniffed, then turned to another bridesmaid. "Stephanie, can you show my sister where to put her things? And make sure the seamstress checks her dress. She didn't make it to any of the fittings." I was directed to a corner of the room where I could change deliberately separate from the camaraderie of the main group. As I slipped into the pink monstrosity with its excessive ruffles and unflattering neckline, I reminded myself that this was just one day. One day of playing the role they expected before I could finally step into my truth. The dress fit poorly as I'd expected. The seamstress clucked disapprovingly as she pinned and adjusted, muttering about last-minute accommodations. I smiled politely through it all, reminding myself of the job offer waiting in my email inbox, the graduation honors I'd earned, the future I'd built for myself without their support or acknowledgement. Halfway through the morning preparations, Amanda had her first meltdown. The florist had delivered garden roses that were apparently a shade too pink compared to the bridesmaids' dresses. "Everything is ruined," she wailed as our mother rushed to comfort her. "The photos will be completely thrown off." From my corner, I assessed the situation with the problem-solving skills I'd honed through years of complex coding challenges. "The photographer could adjust the color balance in post-production," I suggested, "or the roses could be dispersed throughout the arrangements rather than clustered together, which would make the slight color difference less noticeable." The room fell silent as everyone stared at me. Then Amanda's face crumpled into a scowl. "Nobody asked you," she snapped. "Just because you think you're so smart with your computer programs doesn't mean you understand anything about wedding aesthetics." I fell silent, retreating back into the invisible role I'd played my entire life. But internally, something had shifted. Her words didn't wound me the way they once would have. I had proof of my worth, now validation that existed beyond my family's narrow perception. As the morning progressed, Amanda's anxiety escalated into a series of increasingly dramatic crises. The wrong champagne had been delivered. A bridesmaid's hairstyle wasn't identical to the others. James hadn't answered a text within 5 minutes. During one particularly tense moment while Amanda was being consoled in the bathroom, my father appeared at the suite door looking uncomfortable among so many half-dressed women. "Rosanna, a word," he called, beckoning me into the hallway. I followed him awkwardly, holding the skirt of my ill-fitting dress. He led me to a quiet alcove before turning to face me with a stern expression. "Your mother tells me you're not being very supportive this morning," he began. "I've been doing everything asked of me," I replied truthfully. "That's not what I mean, and you know it." His voice took on the authoritative tone he used for business negotiations. "This is Amanda's day. the most important day of her life. Whatever issues you two have had growing up, I expect you to set them aside completely. No sulking, no smart comments, no doing anything that might detract from her moment. The unfairness of his assumption that I would deliberately sabotage my sister's wedding stung, but I maintained my composure. I have no intention of causing any problems, I assured him. Good, because I'll remind you that your tuition payment for next semester depends on your behavior this weekend. Just as he finished his threat, my phone buzzed in my clutch, then buzzed again, and again in rapid succession. My father's eyes narrowed. "What's that about?" "Probably nothing," I said, reaching for my bag, but he was faster, snatching it from the nearby table. "Dad, that's my private property," I protested as he opened my clutch and removed my still buzzing phone. 6 new email notifications, he read from the screen. "Congratulations from the Computer Science Department. Job offer from Tech Future Corporation." LinkedIn notifications. He looked up at me, confusion replacing his stern demeanor. What is all this? The moment had come sooner than I'd planned. I took a deep breath and straightened my spine, no longer willing to make myself small. I graduated in December, Dad. I completed both my bachelor's and master's degrees through an accelerated program. I finished top of my class with a perfect GPA, and I've received job offers from 3 of the top tech companies in the country. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. That's not possible. You're still a senior. We're still paying your tuition. No, you paid for last semester, which was officially my final one. I didn't tell you I was graduating early because... I paused, choosing my words carefully. Because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it on my own. Why would you keep something like this secret? He demanded, his voice rising slightly. Before I could answer, my mother appeared in the hallway, her face tense with forced cheerfulness. What's going on out here? Amanda is asking for her father, and we need to start taking the pre-ceremony photos in 20 minutes. My father turned to her, still holding my phone. Did you know Rosanna claims she already graduated in December? My mother's perfectly made-up face registered surprise, quickly followed by a flash of annoyance. What are you talking about? Stop making things up, Rosanna. This is exactly the kind of attention-seeking behavior your father warned you about. I'm not making anything up, I replied calmly, taking my phone back from my father's loosened grip. Check my LinkedIn profile if you don't believe me, or call the university registrar. I completed the accelerated program with a 4.0 GPA. I have multiple job offers, including one from Axiom Tech with a starting salary of $90,000 plus benefits. My mother's face paled. Why would you drop this bombshell today of all days? Can't you see this is just another attempt to steal attention from your sister? Her accusation hurt more than I wanted to admit. Even in this moment of my greatest achievement, she could only see it as a threat to Amanda's spotlight. I didn't plan to discuss this today, I said truthfully. But since Dad threatened once again to withhold tuition, I don't actually need it seemed relevant. My mother turned to my father. Thomas, we need to get back to Amanda. She can't see us upset before the ceremony. As if on cue, Amanda's voice called from the suite. Mom, Dad, where is everyone? The photographer needs you. We'll discuss this later, my father said firmly, but I noticed a new uncertainty in his gaze as he looked at me. For perhaps the first time in my life, he was seeing me as someone he didn't fully understand or control. The wedding ceremony proceeded with picture-perfect precision. Amanda was radiant in her designer gown as she floated down the aisle on our father's arm. James looked appropriately smitten as he waited at the altar. I stood at the far edge of the bridesmaids' line, smiling appropriately for photos and fulfilling my minimal role without incident. But something had changed. Throughout the ceremony, I caught my father glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not anger, not exactly confusion, but something close to reassessment, as though seeing a stranger where his younger daughter had once stood. At the reception, I was seated at a table far from the main wedding party alongside Zoe and various distant relatives. This arrangement suited me fine, as it allowed me some distance from the immediate family tension. Halfway through the dinner service, Walter, my father's business associate from the rehearsal dinner, approached our table. "Rosanna Henderson," he said warmly. "I looked you up after our conversation last night. Graduated summa cum laude with dual degrees, published research paper on artificial intelligence applications, and already fielding offers from the top firms in the industry. Why didn't you tell me you're a rising star?" His words, spoken at normal volume in the crowded reception, carried to nearby tables. Heads turned in our direction, including those of several family friends who had known me since childhood. "Rosanna graduated already with honors," one of my mother's friends asked, leaning toward our table with interest. Walter continued enthusiastically, "My nephew works at Axiom Tech and says your name is already circulating as a major recruit. Said they almost never make offers to new graduates at that level." More people joined the conversation, asking questions about my studies, my job prospects, my future plans. For perhaps the first time at a family gathering, I found myself at the center of positive attention, discussing my genuine achievements with people who seemed genuinely interested. From across the room, I could see Amanda watching, her expression darkening as she noticed the small crowd that had gathered around my previously overlooked table. My mother was whispering urgently in my father's ear, her social smile fixed firmly in place while her eyes darted anxiously between Amanda and me. The situation came to a head during the cake cutting. As guests mingled with champagne following the ceremonial first slice, Amanda appeared suddenly at my side, her wedding dress rustling as she gripped my arm with surprising strength. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, still maintaining her camera-ready smile. "Having a conversation with Walter about career opportunities," I replied calmly. "On my wedding day, you couldn't let me have just one day without trying to compete with me." The genuine anger in her voice startled me. In her mind, my existence was somehow an affront to her happiness, even when I'd spent a lifetime making myself smaller to accommodate her. "I'm not competing with you, Amanda. I never have been. We want completely different things from life." "Right," she scoffed. "You and your computers and your what? Practical pantsuit fashion and sensible career. Do you know how boring that is? Do you know how boring you are?" In that moment, looking at my beautiful sister in her perfect wedding dress, married to her wealthy husband and surrounded by everything she'd ever wanted, I felt a surprising emotion: compassion. Amanda had always been the golden child, but that pedestal came with crushing expectations. "I'm happy for you, Amanda," I said sincerely. "You have the life you've always wanted, and I'm building the one I want. They're different, but that doesn't make either less valuable." "Stop trying to sound so mature and wise," she snapped. "Everyone knows you've always been jealous of me. That's why you're choosing today to announce your precious graduation and job offers, isn't it? You deliberately upstaged my wedding." Her voice had risen enough to attract attention from nearby guests. My mother appeared as if materialized from thin air, social damage control being her specialty. "Girls, this isn't the time or place," she whispered urgently. "Amanda Darling James is looking for you. The photographer wants some sunset shots on the terrace." Amanda gave me one last glare before allowing herself to be guided away, but the damage had been done. Several guests had witnessed the exchange, and I could see speculation rippling through the reception. I found Zoe by the bar, her expression concerned. "You okay?" "Actually, yes," I replied, surprised to find it was true. For the first time, I didn't feel diminished by her anger. It just felt sad. "Want to get out of here?" I glanced around the lavish reception at my sister and her new husband, posing for yet more perfect photos at my mother, orchestrating social interactions like a conductor, at my father networking with business associates in the corner. This world of appearances and social hierarchy had never been mine, and I no longer needed to pretend it was. Yes, I decided. Let's go. We slipped away without formal goodbyes, heading back to our hotel room to change before an early departure in the morning. As I packed my suitcase, I felt lighter than I had in years, as though I'd finally set down a burden I'd been carrying since childhood. Leaving the wedding early left me with conflicted feelings. Part of me worried I had confirmed every negative thing my family believed about me, that I was selfish or difficult or incapable of celebrating others. But a stronger voice reminded me that I had fulfilled my obligations while maintaining my dignity, and that was enough. Zoe and I drove back to our apartment near campus the next morning. The May sunshine filtering through the car windows felt symbolic somehow, illuminating the road ahead rather than the path behind us. We talked about everything and nothing during the 3-hour drive, from job prospects to favorite movies to dream vacations, deliberately avoiding discussion of the wedding and its aftermath. It was only when we arrived home and I turned my phone back on that reality intruded again. 3 missed calls from my father, 1 from my mother, and a series of text messages from relatives expressing various degrees of surprise about my sudden announcement at Amanda's wedding. I set the phone aside without responding. Whatever conversations needed to happen with my family, they could wait until I was ready. For now, I needed space to process the weekend and prepare for the next phase of my life. That space lasted precisely 1 day. Monday morning, my phone rang with my father's number displayed on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Rosanna. His voice sounded different than I expected, less authoritative and more uncertain. We need to talk about what happened this weekend. I braced myself for anger, for accusations of ruining Amanda's big day or embarrassing the family. Instead, what followed was perhaps the most honest conversation I'd ever had with my father. I looked into what you said, he began. Called some contacts at the university. You weren't exaggerating. Dual degrees with perfect grades, departmental honors, job offers that most graduates would kill for. He paused. Why didn't you tell us? The question was so sincere it momentarily disarmed me. Would you have believed me if I had? I asked finally. Or would it have been dismissed as just computers again? His silence acknowledged the truth of my words. I've never understood your interests, he admitted after a moment. Technology was always something other people handled for me. I didn't see the value in it the way I understood real estate or financial investments. You never tried to understand, I pointed out quietly. No, he agreed, surprising me again with his candor. I didn't. It was easier to focus on Amanda because she followed a path I recognized. We talked for nearly an hour, navigating decades of misunderstanding and missed connections. He shared how his own father had pushed him into the family business despite his interest in architecture. I explained how the accelerated program had given me a chance to prove myself on my own terms. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Too many years of feeling invisible couldn't be erased in a single conversation. But it was a beginning, a crack in the foundation of our dysfunctional family dynamic that let in the possibility of something healthier. My mother proved less adaptable. When she finally called the following day, her first concern was still appearances. Several people have asked me about your job offers, she said, bypassing any discussion of feelings or relationships. The Whitmore's son is looking for a technology position. They're wondering if you might have connections. It was so perfectly in character that I almost laughed. She hadn't acknowledged my achievement, except as it might serve her social network. But even this represented a tiny shift, an admission that my career path might have some value after all, if only as a networking opportunity. Amanda maintained radio silence for weeks after the wedding. I hadn't expected anything different. Her entire identity had been built around being the successful daughter, the one who did everything right according to our parents' standards. My emergence as accomplished in my own right threatened that carefully constructed narrative. The first sign of thawing came in late June, a brief text message. Saw an article about women in tech. Made me think of you. Not an apology, not quite an olive branch, but an acknowledgement of my existence outside the shadow of her spotlight. Meanwhile, I accepted the position with Axiom Tech relocating to their Seattle headquarters with Zoe, who had found an artist residency program nearby. The physical distance from my family allowed me space to establish boundaries and define our relationship on new terms. The first family holiday after the wedding was Thanksgiving. I approached it with a mixture of apprehension and cautious hope. Would old patterns reassert themselves, or could we begin building something new from the foundation of truth that had been laid at Amanda's wedding? The dynamics were noticeably different from the moment I arrived. My father asked specific questions about my work, making a genuine effort to understand what I did despite the technical jargon. My mother, while still focusing primarily on Amanda and James, occasionally included me in conversations rather than talking around me. Amanda herself maintained a careful distance initially, but softened as the weekend progressed. During a moment alone in the kitchen, she offered what passed for vulnerability from her. "I always thought you had it easier," she admitted, surprising me. Mom and Dad expected perfection from me constantly. The right look, the right friends, the right career, the right husband. You got to do your own thing while I was trapped fulfilling their dreams. It was a perspective I'd never considered, that her pedestal might have felt like a prison. "I always thought you had everything," I confessed. "All the attention, all the praise, all the support." We looked at each other with new understanding, two women who had been pitted against each other by parents unable to appreciate their daughters' different strengths. Beyond my complicated family relationships, I found true fulfillment in building my chosen family. Zoe remained my steadfast friend and roommate, her artistic perspective balancing my technical mindset. Through work, I developed meaningful friendships with colleagues who valued me for my skills and personality rather than how I compared to anyone else. I even began dating Daniel, a software engineer from the marketing team who appreciated both my technical brilliance and my dry sense of humor. Unlike previous relationships where I'd felt pressure to downplay my intelligence with Daniel, I could be fully myself, passionate about coding problems and unafraid to outshine him in technical discussions. Looking back on that wedding day that had seemed so catastrophic, I now recognize it as a necessary catalyst. By forcing me to stand in my truth, it freed both me and my family from the dysfunctional patterns we'd been trapped in for decades. The journey from invisible child to confident professional wasn't easy or straightforward. There were still difficult conversations, misunderstandings, and moments when old wounds reopened. But with each honest interaction, each boundary established and respected, we moved toward healthier relationships. The most profound lesson I learned through all of this was that my worth was never dependent on my family's recognition of it. My value existed independently of their ability to see it. By finally embracing my own achievements without minimizing them to protect others' feelings, I not only liberated myself but offered my family the chance to know the real me. Today, I'm writing my own story, one line of code at a time, creating a future limited only by my imagination rather than by others' expectations. And that feels more valuable than any pedestal or spotlight ever could. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself, even when it meant disappointing family expectations? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Remember that your worth isn't defined by others' recognition of it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to embrace your authentic path, whatever that may be.